All right, we are ready for PLP 5.5 video notes. This is going to be volume of a cone. So you'll remember that when we're looking for volume, we're looking for the area inside that's filled up inside this cone. So for that, it's still the same one as the volume of a pyramid. 1/3 base times height. This time though, the base, that capital B, is actually in the shape of a circle. So we're going to have to find the area of the base, which happens to be a circle, for our capital B. So that is going to be a little bit more math in that capital B, but then we're going to multiply by the height, which is going to be an easy one. It'll just give us a number here, and then it's 1/3 of that. So I will be dividing by 3. Base times height divided by 3. And you'll remember that dividing by 3 is the same thing as multiplying by 1/3. So if you like to multiply by 1/3 better and then multiply by the area of the circle base and then the height, that is up to you. To me, it's easier to just say divided by 3. Okay, so here we go. Let's go down and find the volume of a cylinder cone, a right cylinder cone that has a height of 3.9. So we're going to hang on to that height for just a minute, and it has a base with a radius of 14.3. So I'm going to review really quickly with you how to find the area of a circle, because you need to find that. That's what our capital B is. It's the area of the base, which is a circle. So the radius only comes from the center of the circle, and it goes to one edge of the circle. So it could have been from the center down here, the center over here. It doesn't matter. All radiuses, or radii, I think is how it's pronounced, are all the same distance from the center to any side. So it tells us it's 14.3. So it is 14.3 for this radius. So for the area of a circle, it is actually radius squared times pi. A lot of people say pi r squared, and that's totally fine. I think a lot of teachers teach it as pi r squared, which is the same thing. The problem is order of operations tell us to do exponents first and then multiply, and a lot of kids would have done pi times whatever the radius is and then squared, and that would have been squaring this whole thing. And you do not square the pi and the radius, you only square the radius, and then it gets multiplied by pi. So that's why I prefer saying it in this order, so that you only square the radius. Okay, so here we go. So our radius is 14.3. So we're going to do 14.3 squared times pi, and that is going to be our capital B. So then we're going to multiply by the height. And remember, it told us right here that our height is 3.9. And then we can either multiply by 1/3 or just divide by 3. So I'm going to divide that whole thing by 3, and that is going to be our answer. So we're just going to type this whole thing into our calculator. So here we go. 14.3 squared. You can either do times 14.3 to get it on there again, or if you have a calculator that has a squared button, mine looks like this. It looks like x squared, but if I tap that button right there, it'll just put a little squared onto my 14.3. So 14.3 squared times pi. Okay, I know in 7th grade they let you use 3.14 for pi, but that's rounded, and I want it to be more precise. So you need to start using your pi button. So if you have a scientific calculator somewhere, you will have a pi button. I promise. You have a pi button somewhere. If you're using the Delta Math calculator, there's a pi button on it. So we need to do times pi button, not times 3.14. Okay, and then times our height, which is 3.9. I'm going to do equals and then divided by 3 equals. And it's a crazy number, but we are rounding to the nearest 10th. Oh, oops, this is our problem. Rounding to the nearest 10th. So it is going to be 835.1, except this 5 after it is going to bump our 1 up to a 2. So 0.2 inches, cubic inches. Okay, so really quick review. This is the base. So it's base times height divided by 3. And the base is a circle, so we have to find the area of a circle, which is radius squared times pi. Okay, so let's do the next one. The next one, we do not have a radius, I'm sorry to say. It tells us instead we have a diameter. So a diameter is the entire distance across a circle, and it is 10.1. And that's a problem because in the formula for the area of a circle, I need only the radius, not the whole diameter. So I need to find out what half of my diameter is in order to find just the radius part. So the first step we're going to have to do is take that 10.1 and divide by 2 to get half of it, to get this radius. So let's do that first. So I'm going to do 10.1 divided by 2, and that gives us 5.05. So the radius is 5.05, and that's the number that gets squared, and that's the number that then we'll multiply by the pi button. Okay, so that's the B, that's the capital base, times the height. They told us in the instructions that the height is 9.9, so times 9.9. And then since it's a cone and it goes to a point, then we're going to divide by 3. All right, in your calculator, 5.05 squared. I have a square button here. You know what? I'm just going to start over. 5.05 squared. Great. Times the pi button, times the height, which is 9.9, equals, divided by 3 equals 264. 264. That 3 is going to get bumped up to a 4, so 0.4 cubic inches. Okay, let's look at a couple of these that gives us a picture. So unfortunately for us, this one also gives us the whole diameter. It gives us the whole distance across the circle. And I only need the radius, so I only need half of it. So for the radius, I need to take half of the diameter 12, which is going to be 6. So I'm going to do 6 squared times pi button times the height, and the height looks like it's 14, and then divided by 3. I'm literally just going to type all that in my calculator. Once you have the formula figured out, it's actually very easy. 6 squared times pi button times 14 equals, divided by 3 equals 527.7, but this 8 is going to bump that 7 up to an 8. And that is, it doesn't tell us. So cubic units, whatever the unit is. Okay, last one of these that I'm going to do with you, and then I'd like for you to try some on your own. This one, yay, it gives us the radius, and that's what we need. So we don't have to start by dividing it in half. We're just going to use the 7 because that is the radius. So 7 squared times pi times the height, which is 24, and then divided by 3. Okay, so 7 squared times pi button times the height, which is 24, equals, divided by 3 equals 1,231.5, but the number after 5 is a 0, so it's going to just stay 5. So 0.5 cubic units. Okay, I would like for you to go ahead and turn the page and pause the video. And this time there's 4 for you to try, but I really want you to try one of each because they're all slightly different. So before you move on to your Delta Math, do these 4, pause the video, and then check and make sure you did them correctly. Okay, I'm going to work through these really quickly because you should already have them done. This time it tells us that the radius is 7.8, so the radius has already been figured out. So it's a 7.8 squared times pi button times the height, which it tells us is 15.6. And then since it's a cone, it's divided by 3. So this is how you should have solved this problem. 7.8 squared times pi button times 15.6 and then divided by 3 should have come out to be 993 0.9 if you rounded that correctly, and that is cubic centimeters. Okay, oops, there's your answer, sorry. Okay, the second one is different because this time it tells us, I'm sorry, it's a diameter of 3.1. So we cannot figure out the diameter unless we have it cut in half to find the radius. So I'm going to start by taking 3.1 and dividing by 2, and I got 1.55. That is my radius. So I'm going to do 1.55 squared times pi times the height, which they said is 17.4, and then divide that whole thing by 3. And that is, I don't know, 1.55 squared times pi times 17.4 equals, divided by 3 equals, this is what I got, 43.7, but the number after the 7 is going to bump it up to 0.8. And this is cubic meters. Okay, let's look at the last two. This one gives us a diameter. Sorry, we can't use a diameter. I only can use a radius, which is half of it, which would make it 7. Half of 14 is 7. So we're going to take 7 squared times pi times the height, which is 14, and then divide that whole thing by 3. So 7 squared times pi times 14 equals, divided by 3, equals 718. 0.3, but the 7 after the 3 is going to bump it up to a 0.4. And I don't know the label, so it's just cubic units. Okay, last one. Yay, it gave us the radius, and that's what we need to use. So it's 4 squared times pi times the height, which is 13, and then divided by 3. All right, so here we go. 4 squared times pi times 13 equals, divided by 3. You should have gotten 217.8, and that does not bump up. So just 217.8. Okay, just like on all the other Delta Maths, we have given you some space here at the bottom to show your work for the Delta Math assignment so that you can have some scratch paper kind of built in. So go ahead and move on to the Delta Math and use this page for examples if you need help figuring it out.